All right, I think we're ready to go here. Kevin, I'm sure you can probably give me like a thumbs up if you can hear audio. I'm sure everything is fine. We are going to talk about React Router and hopefully get some views here and get this thing saved up on YouTube in case you can't watch it live. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's see, desktop stream. All right, kind of getting used to this whole streaming thing. Okay, so let me bump up the size of this, and geez, hopefully my computer speeds up because this is going real slow right now. Let me shut down a window real quick. Okay, all right, so here we go. We've got a little bit of React Router going on. I'm actually going to start us from scratch on this other window here. Okay, yeah. So here's where we're going to do. We've got ourselves a little app, and it doesn't really do very much, right? It just says "Welcome to React Workshops." Okay, so I just started ReactWorkshops.com. So if you're interested in getting some corporate training for your company, visit ReactWorkshops.com. Although right now there's just a splash page. If you wanted to email me, you can always email me at hello@reactworkshops.com. Okay, so you can always email me there if you have any questions or if you want to schedule any sort of like remote trainings or anything like that. All right, so React Router, I've got this kind of like long kind of history with React Router and how it got me working at ReactTraining.com up until recently, and so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. Let's see. When I was first learning React, I learned all about how components were made and state, and this is back when hooks weren't even around, and so class-based components and actually functional components weren't even a thing yet. And I remember learning a lot about the component, but not really learning as much about like how to make a single page application. That kind of was a little bit more elusive to me, and so when I started doing a little bit more research and finally decided to learn React Router, that's when everything started to kick in. So if you're kind of newer to React, I think React Router is really going to help you go from the understanding of how to make components to understanding how to make a full-blown single-page application. So we're going to be talking about React Router right now, and that's basically what the stream is. So let's start by creating our very first couple of pages here, right? We've got our home page, and we've got our user profile page. I'm just gonna go down here and dress up the home page real quick, and we'll put in a user profile page, okay? So we've got two pages at the same time. Obviously, that's not what we would really want, since we wouldn't want to have two pages, but that's what we have for now, waiting for Webpack to do its reload. In reality, you probably just wanna have one page at a time, right? So React Router gives you this thing called a route, which is kind of a lot like an if statement. So I'm going to import route, and I'm also going to import something called browser router. And since we're here, how about we'll bring that in as well. Okay, so this is going to come from React Router DOM. And the reason why it is React Router DOM is because there is actually a React Router native in case you are doing any native development, but this is for the browser, so we're going to use React Router DOM. And so I'm going to do a little route right here, and let's see, we'll go like this, and we'll say that the path, if the path is like the homepage path, so we'll do that, then the component is going to be the home component. So notice that I'm not going to be rendering an element up into here. We'll talk a lot more about that and what that really means, but let's do the user profile component. So we're going to have a route for the path of, let's just say if the person visits /users/5 or something like that for user 5 or whatever. Okay, so then the component is going to be user profile. I'm going to try to pay attention to the chat a little bit, but I'll probably like take some little breaks and kind of visit the chat and see what everyone wants to talk about. So I'll probably do like little stints of teaching, and then we'll go back into the chat. Okay, so one thing that we need to make sure that we understand is the right terminology in React. So these these are obviously called functional components, right? But these are the components. When we write out something like this right here, that is an element of the components, right? So this is like the element of this component. And if you're looking for like an analogy, I guess you could, if you're familiar with object-oriented programming, you can almost think of these as being like instruction manuals to make instances of something. And so these are almost like what a class is in object-oriented programming, and then what an object is related to a class in object-oriented programming. This is the element, and so this is the instance of this instruction. And so we're going to make sure that we make that very big distinction here, because that's going to really relate into how we talk about React Router. So notice that I'm passing in classes, or sorry, not classes, the components here. I'm not passing in the elements. And so we're going to rely on React Router to actually render the element for the home page. And the reason why we're going to rely on React Router is because they're actually going to give us some props and some meta information. But first, I want us to think of these routes that you're seeing as being a lot like if statements. They're basically saying if the page matches this, then render this component. If the page matches this, then render this component. And you can see here that it's clearly, component. This doesn't say element or anything. It says component because that's what it is. You can't do something like this. You can't do whatever the home page element is or something like that. Okay, so these are like if statements. Let's save this and go out here and see what has changed. Let that have a chance to refresh. Whenever I do streaming or Zoom or broadcasting of any kind, it seems like the Webpack slows way down on that. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything right now. Let's see. Oh yeah, I forgot the one major important part. So when you're using React Router, it's going to need you to wrap your entire application in this thing called Browser Router. And so this is going to provide context for your entire application. And if you don't do this, things won't work, kind of like how they didn't work for me. If you're not familiar with React Context, you might want to go and learn that. You're not going to need to know it for React Router, but it's nice to know how things work in React. React Router Context is a way for all the children components of Browser Router, which is going to be our entire application. It's a way for them to all kind of talk to each other behind the scenes. And so all the different components that React Router gives us, route and switch and many other components, they're going to need to kind of like talk to each other behind the scenes. And so they're going to do all of this with context. And so this is a context provider. Even though it doesn't call itself a provider, that is what it is. Okay, so we'll save this and we'll go back over here. Okay, so now we get the home page, and if I go to /users/5, we'll get, wait a second, what the heck, right? We get like the home page and the user profile. That's a little strange. So what's going on with that? Well, these paths by default, they use what I like to call an inclusive strategy. And what I mean by that is if the path in the URL actually just starts with this, then it matches. And so these are like these independent if statements. And just like in regular programming, you could write two if statements like back to back, and they could both technically be true. So that's exactly what's going on here is the path when we go to /users/5, this one matches, but this one also matches as well. So if you wanted to overcome that, there's a few things you could do. For one, you could go and add the exact prop. And so now that changes this particular route into more of an exclusive strategy instead of inclusive. And that basically just means that it has to be exactly that. Obviously, we don't have to actually see the / at the end of the .com, but it has to be basically just like the .com. And if I did the exact right here, then the person would have to go to exactly /users/5. If I didn't have this right here, then technically someone could go to /users/5 and then /something else. Okay, so this is already starting to feel like what the heck is going on? Like this doesn't feel like a router, right? Routers are supposed to choose like the first thing that matches. Well, that's true for some routers and like some backend routers. You generally have like a big configuration file, like an Express or something, and the first one that matches is kind of the one that wins. And so we're going to go up here and switch this up so that we have a switch component. And we're going to wrap these two routes in here, and this is basically going to change our whole situation so that instead of it being more like if statements, and I got to spell right, instead of being like if statements, these are a lot more like cases to a switch. In other words, only the first one would match. And then there's actually even this redirect component, and redirect. And you could do a redirect component right here, and you could make it so that like if none of these match, then the redirect component would kick in and send you somewhere else. Or you could do like a route at the very end, which you kind of consider to be like your 404 route, like page not found kind of thing. You can do that as well. So anyways, when we do this, this kind of changes the name of the game a little bit, because now we're going to be only matching the first route. So let me just show you something real quick. If I were to take away the exact prop, because I think some people think that like using the switch with the exacts, like it's kind of like a one or the other kind of thing. But notice that when I take away the exact prop, if we go to /user/5, only the home page comes up. So it's actually like the opposite of what we want. And that's because, again, this is on an inclusive strategy, and so we need the exact prop here. And now it would skip this one because that one doesn't match exactly, and we would end up here in this one right here. So anyways, that's kind of like the basics of React Router 4 and 5. So let me give you a little history of kind of like where we are with React Router and like why I'm talking about 4 right now when 6 is going to come out pretty soon. So I actually wrote an article on CSS Tricks a couple years ago on React Router 3, I think, and that got fairly popular and kind of put me on the radar of Michael and Ryan, who work at React Training, and they make React Router. And so now I'm talking to them on Twitter every once in a while, and then as time moves on, they make React Router 4. This what you're looking at right here is we've actually installed React Router 5, but this is React Router 4's API, and so then I rewrote my article for CSS Tricks, and I made one for React Router 4. So if you ever wanted to go and learn about React Router 4, I've got that article up there. Then Michael wanted to release a version of React Router that was hooks based and wanted to really embrace hooks and some of the new direction that React was going in. So he wanted to release 5 as all these new things. But then something happened, and he had to make some changes internally, like the internal mechanics of React Router. And technically, I guess he felt like he had to release a new major version number for that. So that's what became React Router 5, even though technically React Router 4 and React Router 5 still have the exact same API. So he didn't change the API. And if you wanted to go and learn about this sort of thing, you go to reacttraining.com, go to the blog, and let's see if I can find this one real quick. I've written a lot of these articles in here. Okay, so yeah, so you're going to be able to see this conversation going on here where React Router 5, this is where he kind of first announced that he's releasing A5 and the API doesn't change. So if you're on React Router 5, you could learn React Router 4 material, and it's going to be all the exact same stuff because they're the exact same API. And then he decided to decided to start planning React Router 6, which was going to be the one with the hooks. But he realized that he wanted to have like a nice little migration path for React Router 6, and so he released React Router version 5.1. And I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. And this is to help you migrate eventually into React Router 6. Okay, so going back over here, the eventual new API is going to look a little bit different than this, because instead of rendering components, we're going to render elements. And so in React Router 6, this is actually going to be element, and then it's going to be something a little bit more like this. Okay, so element, and then we'll put this over here. So there's this concept in React, which sometimes is referred to as like inversion of control. Instead of passing in the components and letting the route have all the control and we don't have any control, sometimes it's nice to give us out here at the owner level the control. And so if I can render an element, that means I can pass in anything I want right here. I can pass in any props that I want. Whereas when I was rendering a component, I couldn't pass in any props that I want. So let's go back to the component. So this is React Router 4 and React Router 5. So React Router 5 still has this API. That's why, remember when I said that we're using React Router 5 right now. That's why all of this code still works. But one of the problems with React Router 4 and 5's API with component is, yes, the route is going to be handing you some extra information. So there's going to be some props given to us over here. Let me show you that real quick. So if I change this to user ID, now when someone goes to /user/5, it would be nice to know in this components, what the number 5 is, like what the user ID is. And so if you were to take let's see, I'll take this match and we'll get the params, which is like an object. This object will be literally all the different dynamic parameters that you have in the URL, and you can have multiple if you want. And so if I say user ID right here, this prop right here, this match prop, is an example of some meta information that is given to you by the route. Okay, so if we go back over here and take a look, you can see that I'm able to see what user is being loaded, and then obviously just the fact that I have this available to me proves that I can then use that to go and do like a network request to go and get that information. This was cool and all, but it's nice and easy to write. Hey, if I have this path, go to this component. It was really nice. I like the API, except when you have these like one-off like weird scenarios, like what if I needed to pass like my own props into the user profile? Like what would I do then, right? Because I don't have control over the element, or the route does. I can't really pass in my own props. So what they did was they had a render prop, which was like an alternative to the component prop. And the idea was that it would take a function, because this is the render prop pattern, and this would return, and then you would make your own elements kind of like this. So we'll do our own element like that. And now I'm free to pass in any other props that I want to. And the only issue now is the only props that are being passed into the user profile are the ones that I pass in. And so there is no match, there is no location or history. Those are the types of things that you would have gotten from React Router. Okay, so if you make your own element, it's kind of like a trade, right? Like you get to pass in your own props, but you don't really get those ones automatically passed to you. So what we would do is since the route has that information, when they call this function, they would call it with things like, well, this right here would be props, right? And so you would say, I want to get the match information or the history or the location, and then you could just like pass those into the user profile yourself. Or if you just wanted to kind of pass along everything, this would be called props, and then you would do something like this where you just like spread those in. But the whole point is that this whole thing, even though it gives you more control, is a little bit more obnoxious in the sense that you have to like write a bunch more code, and you have to make sure that you pass in all the right stuff, and yeah, it's just a little bit more obnoxious than doing this API. But this one here at line 20 looks a lot nicer, it looks a lot cleaner, it just doesn't give you as much control. And then there was another type of thing you could do where you could actually pass in children, I think. And this is like the children version of the, I can't remember exactly what this other version of the React Router API is right now, but that was like a third thing that you could do too. And one of the things that Michael and Ryan never liked is that learning how route works was just kind of complex. Like there's 3 different ways to do things, and anyways, it's just something that they wanted to get away from. So let's fast forward in time. Now that hooks are available, Michael and Ryan are sitting here looking at this, and they go, well, why do we need to pass like these props that the user never really passed in? That's really kind of like a bad pattern in general, is to have an API where props are given to a component that the person who made the element didn't even pass in. It's kind of like magic props, and it kind of confuses people, and it just makes the app a little bit harder to reason about sometimes for people that aren't familiar with what's going on. Higher order components does that sort of thing. So they wanted to get away from that. So what they really wanted to do is do something like this, where they can say, I want to get the match from, let's see, use route match. Yeah, so this is a custom hook, and we can bring that in from React Router DOM. So use route match, probably don't need that anymore. And so now that we have hooks, and this information can be given to us through context, because this function is using context behind the scenes, we no longer need the router to be in control of making the element. Okay, so this is what I was saying, where the new API is going to be something a lot more like this, where you can do component equals, and then right here you would do, for example, user profile. So no longer does the route need to be in control of making this element. We can make it, oh, sorry, this is not component, this is going to be element. Okay, so this would be the React Router 6 API, this would be element right here, and then this would be something kind of like that. Okay, so this kind of gives us the best of both worlds because it's this nice, concise looking API, but then we have control of passing in our own props if we want to. And also, React Router can give us stuff. And so this is like where we're going with React Router 6. But let's back up for a second because React Router 6 wasn't going to be available for a while, and it's going to be available now. But at the time that they started planning it, React Router 5 was released, and so remember the API is component equals, and then home. We'll do this one real quick. Component equals, and then this is user profile. Okay, so think about this. It's kind of the beginning of Hooks just got released. Profile. It's the beginning of 2019. Hooks just got released, and you're sitting here, and Michael and Ryan are sitting here, and they're thinking, okay, well, we know what we eventually want to do, but this is what everyone has right now. And React Router 6 is going to be kind of a big change. It's going to be worth it for a lot of people. We're not necessarily saying that if you have a giant application that you have to change, right? You can still use React Router 5. It's still a really good router. But there's going to be a lot of changes for people to like migrate to to switching to using custom hooks and then doing something like this. And someone was asking about the children thing, and someone else was saying he'll go into it pretty soon, right? Yeah, so we kind of did some of that yesterday. We'll talk about the children thing in a second. So anyways, Michael and Ryan are looking at this and they're thinking, okay, well, maybe what we can do is for the meantime. For React Router 5, let's have an additional API. You can still do component equals component like this, but what if we did something like this? What if there was a children route? Because obviously, doing up here, doing element equals element, like that feels kind of unnatural in terms of JSX. Like normally if we have like nested JSX, it comes in the form of children. So this right here feels a lot more natural than having something like this go up here inside of element equals and then putting that thing right there, right? Okay, so this is what someone is asking about in the chat as well. So let's see, let's do this for a second. Let's take this user profile and we're gonna do this route. Okay, so user profile. All right, so this feels pretty good. This is something that you can do now in React Router 5.1, and so that is what this other article is about, React Router 5.1. This is the one where if you read this, Michael talks about how we've got all these new hooks that you can use. I'm not sure exactly where in here he talks about it. Okay, so there's use location. There's not only use route match in case you want the match, but there's also because you could use the match to go and get the params still. But there's also use params, which is just kind of a shortcut to get you the params. That makes it nice. So you can just destructure this, and I can say that the user ID comes from use params. Now I can get rid of all of that stuff, and we can go up here. We'll just say use params, and there we go. So this is going to be this is available to you now in React Router 5. And so if you're using 5.1, you can all the old API still works, right? It's called 5.1 for a reason. It's not a major version bump because all the 5.0 stuff still works. But now you can do anything that is the new 5.1 stuff, which is all these custom hooks, and then you can use this API. Okay, so why would you migrate to this API for 5.1 only then to migrate again to version 6 when it comes out? Like, what is the whole point? Well, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you want to go straight from 5.0 to 6, you can certainly do that. But the whole idea here is look how easy it's going to be when you bring in version 6. You're not going to have to change anything up here because version 6 is still going to have the same custom hooks. You're just going to go right here. You're going to say element equals, and you're going to put this right there, and it's just going to work. Okay, so then right here you'll go and say element equals, and then you'll just drag that up there to that spot, and everything will work. So I know some people are kind of waiting, like, what is the point of that? Like, why? What was wrong with just doing it down here? It actually looked a lot better when it was down there in the first place, right? Okay, well, I'll tell you what Michael told me, and this is a conversation that happened a couple months ago, so I'm gonna try to remember the best I can. But let's go back really quick to React Router version 3. So back in version 3, what you would do is you would have something like this. Obviously, back in version 3, there wasn't functional components, but anyways, you would have something like this where you would have your I think you would, I'm not even sure if there was a switch. I think there was a switch, and then you would have like routes, and like let's say this is like your home page route, and let's see, this would be path for your home page route, so it would have been component equals and then home, and then this right here could be like a path for like the let's just say this is like the dashboard, right? So you don't have to be logged in to see the home page, but you do have to be logged in to see the dashboard. And so this is like your dashboard route. So this might go to the component for the dashboard home. Okay, so you have like your home page, and then you got your like your dashboard home page, and then like let's say there's like dashboard slash account, and so this is like the dashboard account or whatever. So you start to build this thing out. But then you realize that there's actually two different layouts here. There's the like kind of like the home page, like the marketing layout, and then there's like this other like kind of dashboard layout. And each of these pages, the dashboard home and the dashboard account, they each need like a common layout. And so what people would do is they would try to figure out like a layout strategy. And what they might do is something actually kind of like this. They might say dashboard home, and let's say dashboard account. So I'm gonna show you what not to do right now. This is a big mistake, and this is actually what Gatsby and Next do, and I kind of hate it. So let's say these two components, this is your dashboard homepage and your dashboard account, and they need like a common layout. And so what you would do here possibly is you might make some sort of like dashboard layout component that you import to the dashboard homepage, and then you would have like your actual dashboard homepage information right here. So the dashboard homepage information right there, and then on this component you would do kind of the same thing. So I'm just going to copy and paste this down, and this is kind of like how some people would do like sub, or like sharing of layouts, if you will. So like some sort of like sub layout thing. Imagine we could even have some sort of like master layout that is represented by that div tag. So everything has like the master layout, but then these two things are like wrapping themselves in some sort of like sub layout called dashboard layout or whatever. The problem with this is what if dashboard layout has like side effects? Like what if it does like network request or whatever? If you have this kind of strategy, going from the home page and then navigating over to the account page, this dashboard layout is going to unmount and then remount. And so any of your like components and mounts for class-based components, or your use effects that are only supposed to run when the component first mounts or whatever, those are going to happen again. And so this is like actually a terrible, terrible strategy. I hate this strategy, and I hate the fact that Gatsby and Next.js kind of promote this kind of strategy. And you know what? They know the consequence of what they're doing. You read up on the GitHub issues, and people ask about this, and they just kind of go, whatever, it is what it is. But this actually can cause a lot of problems. And so what we really need is like the dashboard layout to like not unmount and remount just because you're going from like one page to the next, right? So in React Router 3, what you could do is you could do like a route like this, and then what you would say is that the path is equal to slash, if they go to dashboard, then notice I'm not going to put in a component. I'm not going to say, actually I am going to put in a component. I'm going to say component equals dashboard layout, okay? And then I'm going to take these two components and I'm going to put them up into here like this. And so what this would do, and I'm not even sure if I needed that anymore because it's kind of redundant. I can't remember React Router 3 API perfectly, but maybe doing like that would say like, hey, if we own a slash dashboard, and then if we're at slash dashboard, load the home page. Otherwise, I think maybe we can do something like this or whatever. I can't remember exactly what the rules were for these paths, but the whole idea, the main point here is that these two components would load as the children of the dashboard layout. And this, of course, requires us to have this spot right here available in the route for the children. And a lot of people liked this this technique for doing nested layouts. I'm going to show you how to do nested layouts after React Router 3 as well. That's what I'm going to show you in a few minutes. But a lot of people liked this strategy, and then we lost it with React Router 3. So in React Router 6, we're going to bring it back. So the reason why this type of API is not going to work for React Router 6, and remember, this is just like the kind of transitional period, the reason is because you're going to be able to go up here and you're going to be able to say element equals, and you're going to be able to put that right there. And right here we'll say elements equals, and we'll put this right here. Okay, and so now what we could do is we could have like a nested layout strategy. So for instance, if we are at /users, for example, I could have some sort of like user layout, and then right here I could have the route for the path for /user/user ID, and then this would have the element for the user profile. Okay, so this is actually really kind of nice because it gives us kind of like the best of both worlds. We get to have nested layouts, we get to have elements that we can pass our own props into, all kinds of good stuff here. Okay, so that's kind of where we're going with React Router 6. I do want to take a step back since a lot of us are still writing React Router 5 applications, or maybe you just want to learn like the other type of layout strategy. If you don't want to have all of your routes like in one giant configuration looking file for your router, you could do a different strategy, which is for React Router 5 and 4. And this is really what I wrote those articles for back when I wrote them. So I'm going to comment out these two sections here, and we're going to go over here to this this thing in this wireframe folder. So let me open up that. Okay, so this is like a little kind of a little miniature application just to demonstrate nested layouts. And you know what? Did I save everything? I should be able to go over here and see. Let's go here. Doing something wrong. Import. Oh, I still need to do this thing right here. Okay. Waiting. Do we have any questions? I know that earlier someone asked a question. I think you got answered, but I just want to see if we have any questions right now before I get started on this, based on what I talked about already. If there is, just post them in the chat, and I'll try to take a look. Okay, so going over here to the wireframe. Okay, so here we've got our app, browser router. It's got its switch. So forget about React Router 6 for a second. Just focus on React Router 5. And I realized with these, when I wrote this curriculum, this is actually a curriculum for a course that I wrote. I wrote this curriculum when React Router 5.1 wasn't released, and so you could switch this to be the whole thing where it's the children, or you can just keep it as component. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so one thing that I want you to notice here is that this is like the very top of my application, and we're going to be sending you to one of two places. Either you're not logged in, and therefore you need to go to the unauthorized layout section, or you're logged in. Okay, like you're going to be able to go to the .com here, and if you're not logged in, it's going to redirect you over to /auth. And if you're logged in, it'll just keep you here, and that's the authorized layout. And if you're not logged in, it will redirect you here, and that's going to be this layout here. So one thing I want you to notice right off the bat is that the very top of my application, it doesn't have like a giant router with like every possible page that's imaginable. Instead, what I have is kind of like two like namespaces in the URL. I've got like the if you're at /auth, then here's the layout. Otherwise, here's the layout. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I am kind of pretending to be like logged in right now, but if I log out, you'll see that /auth is like where you would expect to see like the login page, or the forgot password page, or like verify my email, or anything that's like usually these typical websites that have like a big picture in the background and like a little square in the middle for all that kind of stuff. And then if I log in, so clicking on this link doesn't do a real login, it just kind of redirects me over. But yeah, so this is like the layout, and as you can see, it's got like the primary header, like the main section here where the pages are going to go, and then it's got like a primary footer. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at now. So we've got this authorized layout. Let's go and take a look at authorized layout. Authorized layout is the thing that has the header with the dashboard, products, login, and then it's got this section in the middle here, and then it's got the footer, and then the section in the middle is saying, hey, if we are /dashboard, then render the dashboard layout. Otherwise, render the the products layout. And so basically this whole thing you're going to see pretty soon is actually a Firebase looking design. I wrote this whole curriculum for React training, and I'll show you the course in case you want to see the course, but this is going to make like a Firebase style design. So you'll see that kind of come to life here in a second. I kind of like mimicked what Firebase looked like about a year ago. Okay, so the reason why we're not seeing anything, excuse me, in the main content section here is simply because these routes are saying, hey, if we go to /dashboard or /products, then that's when we want to see stuff. And you can see that we are not, we are not at /dashboard or /products. And so if I click on /dashboard or /products, you can see that those sub pages come up. So you see here how like the authorized layout is kind of like this like master layout, so to speak, and then the red dotted lines are kind of like these sub layouts. And so the way that you're going to organize layouts in React Router, if you're not going to do like the new thing that HES6 has, which kind of mimics the old 3.0 stuff, is you're going to start off with something at the top that says, hey, when you're in one namespace of the URL, go to this layout. If you're in another space, go to this layout. And then from here, you can render either pages or layouts. You see here that if we are at /dashboards, there's a dashboard layout. And if we're at /products, there's a products layout, okay? So let's go down here to the dashboard layout. When I'm in /dashboard, let's see, here's like the dashboard layout. There's like these things for like settings and search. And so the green represents like the actual pages there. And then like this kind of section over here is supposed to represent like, maybe the dashboard layout has like some sort of like common, navigation or whatever. And so here we are on the dashboard layout, and finally we get down to pages. Now, of course, this is not all well polished in the sense that it needs to have like the switch statements around things, and probably needs to have some exact props. I'm not going to do all that right now because I just kind of explained all of that, but that's kind of what we would be talking about in the course if we had done it. The main thing that I'm trying to show here is just like how you could do a like nested layout strategy. I think that people are kind of surprised at first to learn that your nested layout strategy in React Router 4 and 5 is really tightly coupled to like your router strategy. So your router and your nested layout strategy are kind of one and the same. And you're not going to have the situation where the router is like kind of all over the place. I'm sorry. You're not going to have a situation where your router is like all in like one spot. What I meant to say is you're going to have a situation where your router is kind of like sprinkled out throughout your layouts to make eventually this nested layout strategy and pages. Okay, and so like if this was a 5.0 React Router situation and I wanted to upgrade, all I would have to do is go here and take out component, take this thing right here, we'll turn that into an element, and we'll go like this, and we'll say route, and then we'll go down here, we'll put, prettier or something, doing something strange. Okay, so this is all I would have to do to convert it to a React Router 5.1 strategy, and then now that it's doing this, I think that makes it so that unauthorized layout would have those custom hooks available. I can't remember if those custom hooks are only available if you're using this version of the React Router 5.1 API, or if you can still do it for this one or not. I just can't remember. Okay, so let's see, where do we go next? I mean, I think that does a pretty good job of explaining nested layouts. Let's go over here. Hold on, one person, the stream broke up for me for a bit. You won't have. Oh, someone was asking something. So the stream broke up for someone. So all I was saying was that in a React Router 3 strategy, or what you could do in React Router 6, is you could have all of your routes as like kind of like one giant like nested route configuration file. And with React Router 4, which has been out for a couple of years now, and React Router 5, you could do this strategy, which is a little bit different than having all of your routes like kind of lumped all together. You could have like your main app here that renders like layouts, and then we go down here to one of the layouts. This renders sub layouts. Okay, so there's layouts. So your router strategy is kind of like distributed amongst your layouts. You see what I'm saying? And then you get in here to the dashboard layout, and that will eventually render the pages. Okay, so I was just kind of trying to say that you can choose either one. I actually like this strategy a lot better, but you could do either one. So let's go back over here to this index file. I'm actually going to get rid of pretty much all of that, And over here in another window that you can't see, I've got something that's kind of like copy and paste ready. So this is like the actual router that, and looks like I need to bring in a bunch of other stuff as well. This is the actual like starting point for this project. Okay. By the way, I probably should have mentioned this, but if you want to see where you can look at this, the code, let me show you where you can look at the course. If you go to reacttraining.com, you could always go to our on-demand, and I keep on saying our because I have a great relationship with the guys here at React Training. I don't work there anymore. We had to do some unfortunate layoffs. Maybe you saw that on Twitter, and so we hope to get the band back together. Maybe later this summer after COVID-19 is done. But until then, I am starting kind of my own thing, just in case I end up not being able to go back. So if you go to React Training, that's where I was working, and if you go to reactworkshops.com. I'm still kind of building the site, but I've been really busy for the last few days, so I just have a splash page up. So anyways, we've got that. Go to reacttraining.com though, and you can go to the courses, and then you'll see here that this is the React Router course that I've been kind of like showing you right now, just kind of a free 1-hour version of it. And if you go over to, let's go over to GitHub, and I can show you where the repo is in case you wanted to like look at all this code actually later on. So ordinarily, I don't think this is very discoverable unless you actually bought the course, but it is a public repo, so you could just go here and check it out. So these are all the repos that we've got here for React Training. Where is it? It is right there, React Router 5 course. So this is, yeah, so you see how I've got a little GIF here. This is like the thing that we build in that course. So let me show you that real quick. Let's see, I'm going to save this, and I don't think we need the wireframe thing anymore. Don't save that. Okay, and let this reload. Give it a second. Webpack is slowing us down. Okay. So here it is. It's almost Firebase. All right. So it's the old design. I think Firebase looks slightly different from this, but check it out. If you go to /projects, this is like a layout, right? Like this is like a certain look, right? It's got like this big hero section. It's got its like tiles and stuff. And then if I go into one of the projects, by the way, the project IDs at Firebase are not numeric IDs. They're like string-based IDs. And so that right there is like the dynamic part of the URLC /projects React Training overview. And if I go back over here, secret project there, we do have a secret project at React Training. I can't wait until it gets released. It was going to be released later this summer, but I don't know if COVID put an end to that. Anyways, so these are like the IDs, and you can see like this is like a layout. So this is like when you're inside of a project. Versus if you're out here, this is like /projects. This is like the beginning of your dashboard. So we've got that layout, but then also if you log out, there's this layout. So there's kind of like 3 layouts here. So you're either not logged in and you're at /auth, or let me do this. We type in React, and there's like a login here. And so being at /projects, we are logged in, and then being at /projects with a word right here, now we're like looking at a project, okay? So let's kind of like go through this and kind of figure out what's going on. For starter, here I've got my router, which is the thing that is the provider, right, from React Router. But notice it's not browser router. It's not the thing that I'm bringing in from React Router DOM. It's something I'm bringing in from utilities. And so let's go and take a look at that. What the heck is going on there? We go over to this router. You'll see that router is just my own component wrapped around browser router. And so this is actually, if you were to kind of like look at this, this is just a little technique that strips away all of the trailing forward slashes on any routes if they have any, because React Router didn't do that for us. I'm not sure what the current story is on that with React Router, but I actually learned of this strategy from somewhere else, and I thought it was cool, so I implemented it. Plus, I thought it was just really cool to just show that you could like make your own thing called router, which is kind of like an abstraction of some of the React Router components. So that's kind of cool. And then this is just a provider just so I can have like authentication throughout the application. Okay, so here's a route that says if we go to path auth, we're going to go to the unauthorized layout. All right, so you know how that works. And then I'm going to make sure I'm paying attention to the chat. Brad, do you have a Patreon or a place for comment? You know what, Kevin, I don't have anything like that right now. So maybe we'll talk about that later on. I am doing this for no tips. This is all for absolutely free. Okay, so if you go to this, what is this authorized route? Like, what the heck is that, Brad? I didn't even talk about the authorized route, but it looks a lot like a React Router route, right? It's got a path, it's got a component. Let's take a look at the authorized route. So we're going to open that up. And as you can see, this is just a clever little component that I wrote that taps into a custom hook that sees if you're logged in. And I've got this like 3-state Boolean kind of thing going on where this login variable or logged variable is either null if we don't know if you're logged in, but if it's true or false, that means I know that we at least tried to see if you're logged in, and you are either not logged in or you are. And so if it's still null, then I just kind of return loading. If it's not the Boolean of true, then I'm going to assume that you are that we found out that you are in fact not logged in. So I'm going to redirect you over to the auth section. Otherwise, I'm just going to take the components and all the rest of the stuff that you passed into me, and I'm just going to pass those straight into a route. And so as you can see, authorized route is just a clever little abstraction around the idea of a route. Okay, so now we can open up the authorized layout. So you can't even be here unless you're logged in, right? And this has the whole match prop. I haven't completely converted this curriculum to the 5.1 stuff. In fact, all the whole video series is all on 5.0. But then at the very end, I do like a little talk on 5.1 because actually I made the video series before Michael had upgraded to 5.1. So anyways, what are some of the staples? Like, what are some of like the fixtures that are like always there when you're in the authorized layout? Well, for instance, we have the authorized primary header, and then I don't know if you're like at /projects, and in that case, you're going to go over to the account sub layout, or if you're at /project/add, right? So if you are, let's go back out here. We've got this look, but if you add a new project, it's kind of like the same look. So being at /projects or project/add, it's kind of like the same look. So that's going to take you to the account layout. Otherwise, if you're at projects with a project ID, I'm going to take you to the project sub layout. And so here's the project sub layout, and some effect, do like a network request to go and get the information. And then this is like the thing that has like the sidebar navigation and everything else. Here's the project sidebar, and then finally here are the pages for things like /overview or /database, the database type. This is kind of cool. So even this page has sub layouts. Like, notice that if we go to the overview, let me get out of here. If we go to the overview section, where's that at? Oh, here it is. Okay, so if we go to the overview section, that's like this look. If I go to authentication, that's this look, and I could just kind of like go between these different pages. A part of the video series is also how to do like animations between route transitions. But if I go to database, this is like one look. And then if I click on this, then I get like this look. And so it's almost like /database has its own like little special sub layout that's a little bit different than the other pages. And so that's why going to /database has the database home. And then if I go to /database with a particular database, then there's the database layout. So anyways, I could like dig down into those, but you can look at those on your own. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, that's what I wanted to show. It's been about 48 minutes now. I said this would be about an hour or less. So if you have any questions for me, I mean, that's like React Router in a nutshell, right? So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to learn there still with React Router. React Router has a really great history. In case you don't know this, React Router is actually the most depended on dependency in the entire world of people doing React. So when people install React, the next thing they install is React Router, more times than any other third-party tool. And I realized that the difference between React Router 5 and React Router 6, it's got this new API and no one likes changing stuff, but hooks came along and I think that they always wanted to do the kinds of things that they're doing with React Router 6 now, but they just couldn't do it because context wasn't really mature and hooks weren't really a thing. And so React Router 4 and 5's API was the best that you could do for a router, I think, in that era. But now React is moving on, and so is React Router. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. If I don't see anything in the next few seconds, then I'll just assume that we're all good, and I'll see you out on Twitter. So follow me at Brad Westfall or at React Workshops. And right, so let's see. One person's got a question. So using those layouts and having the nested routes with switches around various components. Can you do this in version 6 while keeping the routes all located together? If I understand you correctly, I think the answer is yes there. So React Router 6 is going to have the like the different layouts that have the different, like how I have here, like the different layouts each have their own like routes with the, going to sub layouts and pages. You can do that strategy with 6, and you can do more like 3.0 strategy where all of your routes are in one place. And I think you could even do a hybrid. Like I think that if you wanted to do something that was kind of a mix of both for whatever reason you had, I'm pretty sure you could do that too. Cool. So hopefully I answered that question. If there was more to that, I think that Twitter would be a great place to continue. So so that way lots of other people can learn too. Thank you, everyone, and it's been great. I guess I'll see you around the internet.